Story 1. My friend once told me he was not too concerned about using birth control because everyone knows the girl can only get pregnant if they both ejaculate at the same time. His girlfriend was pregnant 3 months later. Story 2. So this fort was built by the Spanish? No, I think it was actually built by the Europeans. Oh, head nods in agreement. Story 3. I've posted this before, but what the hey? My aunt said Dutch people are from Denmark. I told her people from Denmark are Danish. The Dutch are from the Netherlands. She said, no, sweetie, those are Neanderthals. Story 4. I jokingly told a coworker that Halloween was on Friday the 13th this year. His reply, no, it is always the last Friday in October. Another coworker said, you are thinking of Christmas. It is always the third Thursday in December. Story 5. So you are from Country X? Do you know David Smith? Genuine question someone asked me years ago. Name changed to protect the innocent. Story 6. Two women. First woman. Rita, is that you? Rita. Yes, it's been a long time. First woman. What did you do to your hair? It looks like a wig. Rita. It is a wig. First woman. Oh, you could never tell. Story 7. I was standing in line for the Stratosphere Tower in Las Vegas. Two women in front of me were talking about the Beast roller coaster at Kings Island. They said they heard the train jump the track and killed everyone aboard, and the park was trying to cover it up. As a roller coaster enthusiast and a former Cincinnati resident, I had to speak up. I told them the Beast has never had a serious incident and certainly not a fatal one. One of them replied, I know it happened because my cousin was on that train. She literally believes her cousin died in a roller coaster accident that would have made international news and would have been impossible to keep secret. Story 8. Two men standing in front of me in line at Costco. Man 1. Dude, your breath stinks. Man 2. I know, and it is only Tuesday. Story 9. An ex-boyfriend, when discussing a pregnant person in a television show, said, her belly is only big because she has been eating too much, and went on a rant about how it is possible to have a flat stomach during pregnancy and that women need to have self-control and not gain weight. Story 10. My friend went for blood work for pre-diabetic testing after eating an entire Subway sandwich, claiming that they do not add sugar in the sandwich. Story 11. My mom was trying to convince the nurses in my labor and delivery room that the cold she had was not contagious because not all colds are contagious. We were all trying to tell her that a cold is caused by a virus. She explained to them that viruses cause bigger illnesses like the flu. We went back and forth and finally agreed that we do not know what she has, so we do not want to find out if it is contagious near a newborn. Yes, she is narcissistic. Story 12. This was an actual conversation I heard coming from the balconies below my apartment about 20 years ago. Dude. Yeah, dude. It was followed by the fragrance of cannabis wafting up in the breeze. In hindsight, maybe it wasn't so dumb. Story 13. Teacher. Lead poisoning is very dangerous. Student. Is that why bullets are so dangerous? Story 14. A coworker was complaining about the ticket he received for not wearing a seatbelt. He agreed that everyone should wear seatbelts and believes they are an important safety measure. However, he refuses to wear one on principle because he believes the law requiring it violates his right to travel. Story 15. I told this person he had a smooth brain, and he said, hell yeah, I am smooth. Story 16. I worked with a person who, when overhearing a conversation about spaying a kitten, said, I will not fix my cat. Takes away their choice. She was completely serious. I had to walk away. Story 17. A girl named Kristen said she gets mad when people pronounce her name as Christian because her name is spelled with a K, not as H. The CH is what makes the cha sound in Christian. For different people told her that it is the tia in the middle of the word that makes the cha sound, not the ch at the beginning, but she still said they were all wrong. Story 18. My mother told me that famous people are paying for a recreational drug made from adrenaline harvested from kidnapped and tortured children. She said the floating hospital on the boat parked in the harbor in New York during the pandemic was actually a cover. There was an underground tunnel system at that location, and the boat was blocking the entrance. The hospital beds on board were not being used for COVID-19 patients, but were actually used to treat children rescued from these tunnels. I tried to inform her that adrenochrome is an actual drug used in cardiovascular surgery. It has been synthesized since 1906 and would be available for any famous person to purchase if they contacted a doctor and pulled the right strings. Torture would not be necessary. She told me I was wrong. To this day, it was the most frustrating conversation I've ever had. Story 19. Someone said that putting a phone in a bra causes breast cancer. I put my phone in my bra all the time. I am pretty sure I will get breast cancer because it runs in my family. Almost all of my great aunts and some of their children are 3-time breast cancer survivors, except one who did not survive the second time. I did not hear this in a regular conversation, but it was during my cousin's funeral. The minister, during the service, started telling a story about how once a woman came to him with her dead baby who had drowned and begged him for help. He revived the little girl by laying hands on her lifeless body. My cousin and his friend died in a car accident when they drove into a flooded road. Their car flipped upside down into the swollen creek alongside the road, and they drowned. During the service, I was thinking, okay, well, put your hands on David and Trent, and bring them back to life then. This is so stupid. Like, read the room. Supposedly, my aunt and uncle were regulars at the church where he was the pastor. The man sure did love to talk about himself and all the wonderful things he has done for people. Story 20. They were saying they wanted $80 a month for internet. But I heard those new PlayStations had internet on them. So what I was going to do was just buy the PlayStation and use the internet on that so I did not have to pay for internet every month. This was about 10 years ago. I was eavesdropping on a conversation on the bus between two men who had just gotten out of prison. One thought he had figured out a loophole to avoid paying for internet service. I wanted to tell him that even if he had a new PlayStation, it did not come with an internet service provider. It had internet-enabled services. So he still had to pay for an internet service provider on top of paying Sony for whatever services they were selling. But then I decided it was not worth my time. Story 21. They are eating the dogs. They are eating the cats. They are eating the pets. Story 22. I'm never going to donate blood. What? Why not? What if I have an accident in a few years? Who says my blood will be there and not in someone else's body? Very funny. No, I am being serious. Besides that, he is a pretty smart guy, which makes this more ridiculous for me. Story 23. My former coworker Kevin. What is the address here? Me. Blah blah blah. Arlington, Virginia 222? Kevin, no, we are in Washington, D.C. Me, no, we are in Virginia. Kevin brings up MapQuest. See the diamond? We are in Washington, D.C. Me, no, Washington, D.C. gave this part back to Virginia. It is Virginia. Kevin, Washington, D.C. would never do that. Me. Put blah blah blah, Arlington, Virginia 222, into MapQuest. Kevin after putting the address into MapQuest. It is wrong. Story 24. I was walking from the office to the train station with one of my colleagues. We were talking about our children, and I mentioned that my son, who was 3 at the time, liked watching the washing machine go around. She told me I should not let him do that as it would cause autism. Now, my son is on the autism spectrum, but I think the fascination with the washing machine was a symptom, not a cause. Story 25. Young woman at a mall fast food place. Ugh. All they have here are products. I hate products. Or, the trees do not match my outfit here. Somebody should have told me. Story 26. My wife's friend's husband was talking about catching gay. He said, say you're the only straight person with 4 or 5 gay roommates. Eventually, you're going to want to try something with one of them. My old coworker, who is severely overweight and unhealthy, said, I am so proud of myself. I went to Country Buffet for lunch and ate nothing but salad. I had 3-bean salad, potato salad, and macaroni salad. He was completely serious. Story 27. COVID-19 is a government attempt to reduce the United States population. I quietly backed up and exited stage left. Story 28. Science is now catching up to what it says in the Bible. Story 29. We cannot be friends anymore because you lost our Snapchat streak. Story 30. Does this staircase go up and down? I assume they meant if it is for two-way traffic, as there are also stairs on the other side of the room. Asking if they go up and down was so strange. Story 31. I didn't know there was a difference between cups and quarts. This was said by my ex when she wasn't my ex yet. After she made a mistake while preparing soup from a soup mixture. She added 8 quarts instead of 8 cups. For those who don't know, 8 cups equal 2 quarts. She basically used 4 times the amount of water. If I take that at face value, it is very foolish. If she lied because she didn't read the first or second line of the instructions, that is also very foolish. After being with her, I honestly can't tell which it was. Foolishness, dishonesty, or deliberate incompetence. Story 32. Once on a bus, I overheard someone explaining to his companion that since it takes a virus to kill a virus, West Nile virus is the key to eliminating acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Story 33. North is that way. Points forward. Turns around about 180 degrees. Now north is that way. Points forward again. I argued with 2 people over this in school. They ended up going to our geography teacher to try to prove themselves right and did not believe her when she told them otherwise. Story 34. Walking through the Anne Frank house, a woman behind me said, "It's like when we had to quarantine during coronavirus disease." Story 35. Overheard in elevator at work. How was your weekend? It was okay. We moved my aunt into hospice. Oh, that's too bad. Will she be okay? Story 36. A lady I worked with in Texas asked me once where I was from. I said New England, and her response was, "Then why don't you have a British accent?" Story 37. A couple of men in front of me as we were boarding the plane said, "Odd. It is so cold up there since we are nearer the sun." Story 38. I grew up being taught that Pluto was a planet, only for it to be demoted later, and our classes changed their lessons accordingly. I thought it was just an interesting experience and was talking about it with my parents. My mom said, "Oh yeah, didn't they find out Pluto is a star?" I love my mom and everyone is ignorant in some area or another, but wow. Story 39. Guy 1. It's not homosexual if it's a threesome. Guy 2. It is if you're all men. Hard to argue with that logic. Story 40. A girl in my advanced level drama class asked if Shakespeare was still alive. Story 41. She doesn't need a water bowl. She doesn't drink. This is from my ex's brother regarding his indoor-outdoor cat when I asked him where her water bowl was. He concluded that she must somehow be a breatharian. Story 42. I worked with a woman who claimed she only defecated 2 or 3 times a year. This was because her metabolism was very high and her food intake was very small, so her body absorbed and converted everything she ate into energy. Story 43. A friend's girlfriend thought Martin Luther King Jr. had been president of the United States. Story 44. I was asked where they mined tin foil. The person thought it came out of the ground in long sheets. I cannot remember their name, but if it was you, you are the most overly confident and foolish person I have ever met. Story 45. Not me, but my friend worked at Mount Rainier. Several tourists who pronounce it like morons asked where the elevator to the top of the mountain was. There isn't one. Story 46. A customer at work asked me what my name was because I had used a nickname instead. I told him and he asked if I was Hispanic, to which I replied yes. He then asked if I was Mexican, and when I told him no, he spent the next minute trying to guess where I was from. Eventually, he said, "So you're a migrant worker? It must be hard being away from your family. Must be doing a lot of video calls." I have lived in Canada my whole life, am in my last year of high school, and have no accent whatsoever. Story 47. Anyone who believes the QAnon conspiracy theories about tunnels, adrenochrome, Hillary Clinton, and pizza shops, as well as vegans trying to stop people from eating meat by suggesting they eat their dog. Story 48. Overheard some teenagers on the bus. "Hey man, how do you spell ID? AIDE. You're stupid, man. It's EYEDE. Story 49. When I did tattoos, a guy came into the shop wanting Mr. 113 on his wrist. It was not all that unusual. We had it drawn up, my coworker placed it, and she started the tattoo. As soon as she began, the guy screamed in pain and jumped up. "What is in that thing? Is there a needle in there? That hurts." This guy was in his 30s or 40s. "How do you not know how tattoos are done?" He said, "I don't know. I just thought it was some permanent ink or something." The guy went outside for almost an hour to smoke and psych himself up. He got the outline done at least, but couldn't handle the pain anymore and didn't get it filled. I still can't believe he didn't know tattoos were done with a needle. Story 50. I received 2 reports from the same person. She, an 18-year-old female, was complaining about leg pain. Eventually, she jumped up and started running around, expressing how much her leg hurt. I got her to sit down and told her she might be having a panic attack. I took her pulse and said, "No, your pulse is not too fast." She asked, "Is it too slow?" The problem was not her leg pain. She was seeking attention. Another time, the same 18-year-old female was upset about not getting enough attention and said she thought she was pregnant. I felt my stomach drop. I had not been intimate with her, so I knew I was not the father, but I also believed she would be a poor mother and would likely place the responsibility of raising the child on her parents and friends. The next day, she was happy again. I asked about the pregnancy. She said, "Oh, I'm not pregnant." I asked how she knew and if she had taken a pregnancy test. She replied, "No, I thought I was pregnant because I had gained a little weight. At that point, I ceased contact. I knew something bad might happen eventually, and I did not want to be involved when it did." Story 51. My grown daughter once said the oceans are salty due to whale semen. Story 52. In Australia, the sun moves in the opposite direction. True story, a friend from Sweden who recently visited the land down under. Story 53. A few years ago, I was going to university by train, and a few chatty elderly ladies sat in the chairs opposite me. They were reading a newspaper together, looking at the movie section to see what was new in cinemas. Then one of them said to the other, translating from another language, "I heard 1917 is an extraordinary movie. It's about the French Revolution." Story 54. It was September 11th. I was in high school. We were all watching, horrified, and saw the towers collapse live. All of us were talking to each other when a girl suddenly said, "You know what my favorite animal is? Elephants." I'm sure it was just the stress and her being overwhelmed, but I swear I heard a record scratch. Story 55. I was wearing a tie-dye shirt, and a man said to me, "You have been to Atlantic City because I know the person who makes those shirts." Story 56. The 2 greatest presidents of my lifetime are Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Story 57. My little brother once said when he was younger that siblings can date. He is not that foolish anymore. Story 58. I knew a woman who believed everything could be explained by astrology. Nothing specific, just that everything revolved around people's signs. It was truly bizarre. Story 59. I was just in Dubrovnik on holiday. It is a beautiful old city surrounded by walls on the coast. I heard an accent I recognized as from my country say, "Whoever built the city was not very bright. They really did not need to build these walls so high just to keep the ocean out." Story 60. Years ago, I overheard a conversation at a newsstand in Portland about the mockumentary Confederate States of America. The worker was ready to end the small talk, but the older man continued, saying, "Yeah, Abraham Lincoln dressed up as a woman to escape. I never knew that, but this guy's movie showed the film of it." The clerk was taken aback. That's a fake story. That movie is set in an alternate reality where the Confederacy won the Civil War." The older man seemed frustrated and shook his head. "No, this was a documentary. It was on Oregon Public Broadcasting. I think it's real." The clerk said, "Hey, I have to get back to work." The older man seemed flustered, waved him away, shook his head, muttered to himself, and left. Story 61. Seriously, guys, I'm serious. Let's rent a bus or something this summer and drive to Europe. A buddy in college majoring in education in the United States. Story 62. I was in a car with some extremely wealthy people. Her grandfather founded one of the big banks. My husband was an oil expert, a topic I am somewhat knowledgeable about and can hold an intelligent conversation on. While discussing petroleum infrastructure in the desert, Madam interjected, "When drilling for oil, what do you do about all the wires down there?" There was a long pause. My husband tried to clarify, "Honey, we're talking about thousands of feet deep." "Yes, I know. But what about the really old wires? Like ancient internet cables?" Story 63. I lived in Canada for a period long enough to celebrate numerous holidays. I made a Happy Thanksgiving post in October, referring to Canadian Thanksgiving, and my mom called me, confused. "Why Thanksgiving? Isn't that a little early?" I explained to her why they celebrate on a different day than the United States. I thought that was the end of it. A few months later, I called her to wish her Merry Christmas, and she went silent. "You mean it's Christmas there too?" I love her dearly, but I have many stories like this. Story 64. I was at a yard sale once, and they were selling a large collection of globes. A woman walked up and asked, "What are all these world things?" Story 65. Working as a waiter, the lady orders the shrimp and sausage pasta. When I deliver it, she gets mad at me and says, "I cannot eat this. I am allergic to shellfish." Story 66. At work, offering water to a coworker. "Do you want regular water or carbonated water? I'm on a ketogenic diet. And I'm avoiding carbohydrates." Story 67. About 20 years ago, there was a BBC television show called Walking with Dinosaurs, which used state-of-the-art computer-generated imagery to present a nature documentary-style show of the Jurassic and Triassic periods, complete with narration by the renowned naturalist David Attenborough. A colleague I worked with at the time said she did not understand why the dinosaurs did not attack the cameraman. Story 68. You can't wash your hair when you're on your period. You're washing off your hormones. My mother-in-law 4 years into my infertility struggles. This is my daughter-in-law name my sister-in-law, and she's family because she gave us 2 grandbabies. And this is OSU Jilly Bean. She's just kin because she hasn't given us any babies yet. Mother-in-law introducing me to people during my fertility struggles. You can't raise your arms over your shoulders. You'll wrap the cord around the baby's neck. Same mother-in-law when I was pregnant with my in vitro fertilization baby. I almost did jumping jacks in front of her. Glad this is a baby shower or everyone would think you're just fat. My morbidly obese mother-in-law 30 seconds into my baby shower, in front of friends and family. Note I went from 140 to 160 pounds during pregnancy and dropped all the weight within 6 to 12 months after the birth. You can't go watch the Alien movie. You'll scare my grandbaby. Father-in-law, jokes on him. This kid loves horror films now. You're tired? Just sleep when the baby sleeps. Father-in-law, I love my husband, and he is the only reason I tolerate these people. Story 69. Arrived offshore on an oil rig. It was my first time on board that rig, so I had to complete an induction. During the induction, we were taken into the mess hall and shown the meal times. One of the workers asked, "What time is the midnight meal?" The person conducting the induction was speechless for about 30 seconds, just looking at everyone's faces, then said, "Midnight." The original worker nodded and replied, "Okay, thanks." We continued the induction without any further questions. Story 70. An American asked a German who on earth he thought taught the English to speak English, rather loudly. The German gentleman responded that no one taught them. It is their language. The American replied, "You're wrong, we Americans did." I have never seen anyone look as astonished as the German man. Story 71. A man at my previous job, who was Mexican and whose entire family was Mexican with some members not speaking English, started ranting about politics. He said, "All these Mexicans are coming in and taking our jobs." Someone responded, "Aren't you Mexican?" He replied, "I'm talking about the other Mexicans." Story 72. 2 men at a rural Walmart wanted to know if they could buy rattlesnakes at Walmart. Story 73. I want to learn sign language so that if I ever go blind, I can still communicate with you. Story 74. I have a conservative cousin who argued that in places with teacher unions, people only become teachers to get rich instead of to help educate children. Story 75. Tales of a waiter. Can I get the quesadilla without cheese? Do the beef nachos have any meat in them? Story 76. Teen standing in line at the grocery asks his friend, "Did you know Paul McCartney was in a band before Wings?" Story 77. Ah, is your baby a girl or a boy? A boy. What is his name? Jesus. What kind of name is Jesus? A biblical one. Not necessarily dumb, but hilariously funny to me. Story 78. Me. They are not eating people's pets. That is a very old racist trope. He is lying. Everyone involved who would actually know is saying he is wrong. Mom, I don't know. It is all over TikTok. I just can't with this anymore. Where did the baby boomers put their brains? I don't want to live in bizarro world anymore. Story 79. My uncle, while insisting he is not homophobic, said he does not spend time with gay men because being around them will make him gay. When I asked why that logic did not apply to his lesbian sister, he said it is not the same type of gay. Story 80. I had a girl tell me her phone did not have service at a concert, so she could not take photos. Story 81. Every time I get an influenza vaccine, I get the influenza. No, that is only your body responding to the vaccine. That is not the influenza. Please avoid spreading misinformation. Story 82. My sister had a not very smart friend. One time she was over for dinner and my dad said to her, "Wow, you're quite the carnivore." She responded, "Actually, I'm a Virgo." Story 83. My friend told me to order a pink taco at Taco Bell. The worker laughed and said, "Oh, we actually have that a few miles from here at a local strip club." Story 84. My supervisor told me that black cats drain the life from babies. He also advised me that only homosexual individuals use purple-colored ink pens. Story 85. I quoted a Bible verse to win an argument against a religious person and was hit back with, "That isn't canon anymore." I would have taken it as a joke, but looking at the lady, who was clearly in her 50s, made me feel like she actually said it dead serious. I couldn't even continue. I was imagining God just coming to earth to say that part of the Bible wasn't canon. Another time I said something like, "Shut up," and I was hit back with, "The only way you can shut me up is with sex." It was so out of nowhere I just couldn't continue. Story 86. My wife told me that buffalo was the female and bison was the male. I stared at her, and her father started laughing. Story 87. My ex thought that leap year changed the day of his birthday in April. Story 88. In a philosophy class, the topic of where Italy is located came up in conversation, and the least knowledgeable girl I have ever met said, "Oh, I thought Italy was in France." I responded quickly and told her that it definitely isn't, but she did not believe me. Someone then tried to list all of the things Italy is famous for: pizza, the Romans, the Pope. Technically it is the Vatican, but still, to help her remember. She then said, "What is a pope?" I left the room. Story 89. This was a conversation between myself and a coworker. Her finishes a call. "Well, that guy I just talked to spoke Romanian." Me, "Oh cool." Her, "You should have handled that call, risky mama." Me, "Why is that?" "I speak Greek." Her, "Yeah, but isn't Rome close to Greece?" Story 90. Someone called me attractive. They are obviously not intelligent or visually impaired. Story 91. I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. It is just not possible to have lost Georgia. It is not possible. Story 92. My mom was very ill years ago, and my 3 sisters, who fight amongst themselves all the time, were trying to be civil to each other. My little sister was complaining that she was not able to ask questions when the doctor was speaking with all of us. My older sister is a control freak. Finally, one day, she got her question in and asked, "I think she needs more intravenous fluids. She looks emancipated." Then she couldn't understand why we were all laughing, even the doctor. This was the same sister who asked, When I ordered a blue cheese olive in my martini, how do they get that red pimento out? Do they pit them? Apparently, she thought they grew that way. Story 93. She got an oil change once, then her car broke down, and she will be damned if she ever gets another oil change. We, also women, tried to tell her but had no luck. Story 94. We took our children to a small living history museum in a county park that had a native hoofed animal enclosure with a small herd of bison. I heard a father tell his little boy that the buffalo had almost been wiped out by the Native Americans, but we saved them. I have been kicking myself ever since for not saying something, but it probably would not have done any good anyway. Story 95. What day does Black Friday fall on this year? Dude, are you kidding me right now? Huh? Could be any day since it is just the day after Thanksgiving. Story 96. Sitting in the optician's office. A man sitting next to his wife points at the glaucoma testing machine and says, "I'm not going on that machine. It makes you short-sighted." Then you go into that room afterward, and they sell you glasses. Story 97. A new private in the platoon wanted to know what peligro meant because he saw a sign that read, "Danger peligro." Story 98. I was in primary school and overheard my friend insisting, black and blue, that giraffe is spelled with a C, as in seraph, and I just can't get over it. Story 99. Bruh, I am not flashy, I am confident. Said on the metro in Washington, District of Columbia, by a typical young man to his girlfriend. Story 100. I heard someone once say, if the Earth is rotating, why don't we just fly straight up and wait for our destination to come to us? I had to take a moment to process that. They were completely serious. It took a lot of self-control not to laugh, but it is still one of the most mind-boggling things I have ever heard in a conversation. Story 101. Overheard at a hot springs. So, how do they keep the water hot? Story 102. The moon is a star, and the sun is a moon but closer. I could kind of see where their wires got crossed, but it was still amusing. Story 103. I was in a taxi for an hour with someone who believed every conspiracy theory, was a flat earther, and did not believe in evolution. He was super friendly and did not argue with me. He was laid back enough to agree to disagree toward the end, which was refreshing. Could have been much worse. I just wish the conversation had fizzled out quicker since we kept going in circles. The weirdest thing he said was, well, if evolution is real, how do you explain the dinosaurs dying out? I could not follow the logic he used or what he was trying to say when he tried to elaborate. Then he went through Taco Bell to grab dinner, it was on the way, and I said I did not mind. And he bought me a taco, totally unprompted. He was actually pretty chill, just totally nuts. Story 104. In a discussion about how to crab in the Puget Sound, after the native explained to the southerner who had asked about the process that you are required to throw the female crabs back, the southerner said, female crabs? You have male and female crabs. Story 105. In 2008, I said, I wish I could get cancer so I could smoke marijuana and wear a different wig each day. My buddy's baby's mother's hippie best friend. I yelled a lot. My mother had recently lost a friend to cancer. Story 106. Pro tip. As soon as you pull in front of a drive-through speaker, the staff can hear everything you say. For example, I cannot be pregnant because I did not ejaculate. Story 107. A guy just came into the pizza place I am at and told them he is friends with the owner and that he gets free pizzas. They called the owner, who said he does not know him. The guy got them to hand him the phone, talked briefly, then hung up and said the owner confirmed he gets free food. They called the owner again and then kicked the guy out when the owner confirmed he did not say that. This happened about 5 minutes ago. Story 108. Ooh, my turn. That is not mental illness. It is a demon. Story 109. I don't remember exactly, but once I was in an art studio and overheard two women having a conversation. I only caught bits of it, but I heard these sentences, all of which followed each other. Yeah, I'm not Muslim, but I'm participating in Ramadan. Yeah, but I'm not going the whole day without eating, you know? I'm actually considering converting to Islam. Oh, but if I do, I would still eat pork. I just love bacon so much. Now, I'm not Muslim myself and I don't know much about it, but this sounded odd. Story 110. My Polish grandmother told my brother that if she speaks Polish loudly and clearly, then non-Polish speakers will understand it. Story 111. A few years ago, some 4th or 5th graders started arguing with my friend because of a random joke they thought was directed at them. My friend simply said, "I was not talking to you." Then one of them replied, "We weren't talking to you either. We were talking to the fan." The next time they said something, I patiently waited for them to finish and responded, "Just wait for a moment or two. It will reply when the electricity comes back." I know it was lame, but definitely not as dumb as theirs, right? Story 112. Overheard two 18-year-old girls on a bus once. One was explaining to the other how bunnies and rabbits are not the same animal. Bunnies are fatter. I know this because my brother had a bunny farm. The other girl looked so done. Story 113. Oh, this happened today at lunch. In a public space, my husband and I were sitting next to a booth with two men. Your average white men in their late 30s, maybe 40s. Both of them had drinks only, from what we could tell, as well as hearing the waitress say, "No food today?" etc. They were in the middle of their conversation by the time we sat down. The man on the right of the booth was spewing misogynistic nonsense to his friend, relating to his friend's girl problems with his current girlfriend. The man on the right said, "She shouldn't be going out with friends. You can't let her go out, bro. Because women are thoughtless but get in each other's heads with bad, strong, independent woman ideas, bro." He referenced his mother following behind his father, his judgment, his money, and the phrase man's world. At one point, I heard the man on the right say he has a sexual attraction for his mother-in-law or someone else's mother. I didn't know and didn't care. It was gross, and I checked out at that point, only occasionally hearing awful things about women needing to obey their man. But that his friend should think about all they talked about and pray about the situation. It was mind-numbing to listen to, and thankfully, by the time our main meal came out, they had both left. Story 114. From earlier today in the waiting room of a medical clinic. A woman in a motorized wheelchair said, "I have an appointment at 2 p.m. Receptionist? Okay. Please have a seat." The woman did a double take but then wheeled away. I was dying inside. In my job, we sell services in increments of 4 weeks, or 28 days. A client complained afterward, saying that a 4-week period should have 31 days like some months do. Story 115. I had a coworker who was a woman in her early 40s. I was about 26 at the time. We were talking about how she used to work in schools in special education. She mentioned, "You know Joe from the show The Facts of Life? She had Down syndrome, but she got surgery to correct it." I said, "Did you just say Joe from The Facts of Life had Down syndrome but had surgery to fix it?" She replied, "Yes, she did. They can do that." I asked, "Joe, the actress Nancy McKeon, that Joe, had Down syndrome and had surgery?" She said, "Yes, everyone knows about it." I responded, "Nancy McKeon does not have Down syndrome. It is a chromosomal defect and cannot be cured with surgery. If it could, millions of families' lives could have been improved over the years." She insisted on her point until I became so frustrated and offended that I said, "It doesn't work that way. You either have it or you don't. You can't just have surgery to fix it." I walked away and received a message 15 minutes later from the human resources representative asking if I would apologize to her because what I said was offensive. I was surprised and said, "I was offensive?" I then explained the story and said that suggesting Down syndrome can be cured with surgery is offensive. I did not use derogatory language. Rather, I used the proper term according to the early 2000s terminology. The human resources representative was astonished at how mistaken my coworker was. I did not have to apologize. Story 116. Water is not wet until you come out of the water and oxygen from the air touches you. Story 117. I have loved palmetto trees since I was a little girl. Every summer after our 2-week beach vacation on the South Carolina East Coast, I would beg my mother to buy some so we could plant them in our yard back home in central South Carolina, 3 hours away. Every time, She would tell me that palmetto trees are native only to the East Coast and would not grow in our area of the state because of different climates. I finally stopped asking for them around 5 or 6 years old and completely believed what she had told me until I was in my mid-teens. Story 118. The most frustrating thing I hear is when people are not listening to each other and are more interested in a monologue. Story 119. At the cinema the other evening, we were seated in front of two women, whom I estimated to be between 18 and 20 years old. One of them seriously said, "He is old enough to get over his mother's death. She should get over it." And the other person agreed. They then discussed how the Marvel superheroes should have resolved their differences through conversation rather than fighting. Apart from Black Panther, who was allowed to fight because his father had just died. Story 120. Someone said to me that she loves me. I am not falling for that old trick again. Story 121. Man, it is just common sense to know that climate change is not real. Woman nods in agreement. Story 122. My mom and her friends were talking about their children. They told me and my mom about their children's accomplishments. My mom said, "Well, my children didn't go to work. They all stayed at home and never worked or got married. They received checks and we all lived together." The friends looked at each other and left. I never saw them again. Story 123. I was on a cave tour at Florida Cavern State Park and the guide, who was clearly a volunteer and not a park ranger, stepped into a gallery and said, "And not all the sparkles on this formation here," as he shone his flashlight on it. A lady in the tour group replied, "Who put those sparkles there?" My partner and I had to rush back 2 galleries to bury our faces in the wall and scream with laughter. Story 124. A man is telling his girlfriend that if she does not reach orgasm, there is a lower chance of her becoming pregnant. Story 125. I was driving with people to Los Angeles for a birthday. The driver did not know that when you are on the freeway, if the right lane has small dashed lines, then it is an exit lane that takes you off the freeway. Another person had to explain to her the difference between those small dashed lines and regular dashed lines on freeways. She was 22. We live in a smaller area, but we also have exit lanes on our freeway. I was shocked. Story 126. Wasn't Hamilton a magician? Or isn't dysentery where the letters are all weird and mixed up? We were talking about dyslexia. Story 127. If it had not been for my horse, I would not have spent that year in college. Story 128. So I told her I cannot be racist because I am black. Story 129. Grandmother to her grandson. This lemonade contains only 5% juice. It has sugar in it. If I had known it contained so little juice, I would not have bought it. She might not have understood the difference between lemonade and lemon juice. Story 130. Why are you not in college today? Oh, because of the snow. Looks out the window. It's melted. Story 131. A group was examining an old coin a cashier had pulled from their cash register. One of them said, "Is it Austrian? Then why is it in German?" Story 132. What is your race? I am black and white. How are you black if your mother is white? Story 133. My dealer gave me some free cocaine. Do you want to try it with me? Friend, you are going to get addicted to that substance. I can stop anytime I want to. Story 134. Gotta use some of that double-sided glue, I said. I meant to say tape. I worked in a kitchen years ago. Never has the Caesar salad had bacon. Sure does, bub. It was very busy, and 42 degrees Celsius in the kitchen that day. I took a long break and told the server to keep her tips. Story 135. I once heard someone say they think the earth is flat because they have never seen a curve. Story 136. Do you think they have tacos here? We were directly in front of a taco truck. Story 137. We were talking about dinosaurs, and the conversation went like this. We don't really know what dinosaurs looked like. We can only make educated guesses based on their fossils. But people could have told their kids, then they tell their kids, and so on. So at least a few people on Earth really know what they looked like. How could someone have ever seen what a dinosaur looked like? Dinosaurs were around at the same time as cavemen. I saw it in a movie. Story 138. I was in class and we had to be paired in a group to go over a poem. It was a group of three, me and two other girls. The poem talked a lot about astrology and had terms like Virgo, Leo, and Cancer. One of the girls responded, "Yeah, I get it, but why does she have Cancer?" And continued to give answers like that for the rest of our time as a group. Story 139. Many years ago, in the late 1970s, when I was about 18, I was on a date at a party with many people under the influence of drugs. I was never into drugs, so I was always the sober one. This girl had a puppy and said that you could teach dogs to talk if you were patient enough. I stopped attending these kinds of gatherings soon after that. Story 140. Dumb coworker 1. Where is Portugal? Even dumber coworker 2. I don't know. I think it's in South America or maybe Spain. Our education system here in America really needs to do better. Story 141. My friend said he was not American even though he was born in the United States and still lives there. Then he said California is not a part of the United States, so that makes him Mexican. Story 142. Hurt a guy at best by helping his friend buy a computer. I can't recall the exact speed of the central processing unit, but the statement was kind of like, it's got a 2 gigahertz central processing unit. That means it's 8,000 megahertz. Story 143. I had a friend tell me years ago she might not be able to get pregnant due to endometriosis, but her sister said she would be a surrogate if that was the case. She was sad the baby would not be biologically hers, but she would love it anyway. I was standing there in college for biology at the time. Story 144. Slavery was wrong, but it was not illegal at the time. And this is coming from a college-educated chemist. Story 145. A colleague I worked with sat down at lunch and said quite seriously, I think war is a good thing. I spent the next 30 seconds trying to figure out whether I misheard him when another coworker interrupted. He then spent the next 15 minutes defending war. Story 146. It was not exactly what I heard during the conversation, but just watching and witnessing a gas station clerk nonchalantly sell a pack of cigarettes to a very obviously pregnant woman. I will never forget the first few weeks moving to Maine. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.